Greetings to you all wonderful people, lovers of aviation history. Welcome once again to another series of life sharing experiences. We're dealing with aerophobia. Waiting be your wahala. Why do people fear to fly? Flying is supposed to be one of the safest forms of transport, if not the safest. But still, why do people fear to fly? I know people take Valium before they check in at the airport or a little after they've checked in, so that by the time they are aware of themselves or by the time they are awake, the aircraft's on the other side. Why? This industry is one of the safest. Captain Victor Amoah is my name, from the studios of Aviation Maestro Multimedia. And I'm saying again, aerophobia. Waiting be your wahala. Waiting be your wahala. Today we're looking at the air navigation services. Air navigation services and its contribution to making sure aircraft is safe. From our first video, we said we are now in the era, from the late 90s to today, we are now in the era of safety and quality, constantly assessing our operations of flying people from A to B and coming up with policies and systems to ensure that it gets better and safer each day. So today we're looking at air navigation services, a place where people don't really look at so much, especially in the passenger side, because the passenger, most of their fears is the aircraft. Most of their fears is whether the aircraft is being maintained well. Most of the fears are whether the industry itself is regulated. But today we're going to look at air navigation services. And it's just simply put, I think I have this one on one of my videos of the Aero Glossary. But simply put, is the process of flying an aircraft from A to be using complex systems, resources, that's human-wise, and policies. This is just my paraphrase. We have the detailed one in our aero glossaries, the air navigation services. That means to move an aircraft from A to B, liken it to a car. You are going from here to wherever you're going, whether the market, the home, the shop, whatever, and you're on a 10-kilometer journey. And guess what? You meet traffic lights, speed ramps, road markings, other forms of road signs, policemen there to check licenses here and there. You meet so many things, zebra crossing and everything, just to safely drive you from one side of your home to the other. Same story with the airlines. From one airport, or navigating from one airport to the other, has its sets of complex systems, the kind of people who man these systems, and the policies that man or oversee the safe travel from A to B. Today we'll just talk a little bit of what we did. There's a list of the air navigation services, but the ones that you may feel, if I should say, the ones that you are a bit familiar with is what we're going to talk about. That's one, the runway of the airport. You always take off and land on a runway. But it's interesting to know that we have a committee in the airport management sector that oversees the safety of the runway on 24-hour basis, making sure that the surface of the runway is not contaminated with any what we call foreign objects. When I say foreign objects, objects that the engines of the aircraft can ingest into it and cause disasters or chaos. Okay, so we're looking at the runway itself that you just see. You may see from a layman's point of view that it's a stretch of road. But I'm here to tell you that we have a committee that sees to the safety of the runway at each airport, called the local runway safety team. They just make sure that the runway is safe, good for use, no potholes, no cracks, no foreign objects, flying objects like sachet bags and all these kind of nothing, making sure that it's safe. Because if we don't have a committee to oversee this thing and somebody misses an object somewhere, it can cause so much damage to the aircraft and the flight. So we have the runway safety committee making sure that the runway is in top form each time that planes take off and land. Sometimes when planes take off and land, to the rubbers, the spinning of the tire, that's the aircraft tires on the runway, leaves a bit of the tire debris there. At one point in time, if they don't maintain it so well, what happens is that anytime that it rains, instead of the water to drain off, it will now form something called standing water, which we call an aircraft can hydroplane. So another aircraft coming to touch down on the runway, which is wet and has this pool of water, will not really have its tires on the ground. It will have its tires on top of the floating water. And instead of the aircraft to brake, it cannot brake because it's already floating on top of water. We call it hydroplaning. It's also another perceivable disaster. So the runway itself, that we just see it like a stretch of road, has a lot when it comes to maintaining it through the runway safety team. The lights in the airport are also very of paramount importance, especially in the places where you have foggy weather or reduced visibility conditions. The runway lights, sometimes when you go to the airports, if you live behind airports or you live on the side of the airport, you see sometimes different colors. They all mean different things to the flying crew. Different things. The blue lights are the taxi edge lights. The center line lights are sometimes amber, then white and red, etc. All those lights are all part of the navigation improvements to make sure that aircrafts enter in and out of airports safely. We have what we call the navigation signals, which should always be in top form to make sure that the signals guide aircraft coming into the airport or being overflying the airport correctly. So the pilot must be able to say, I am on this bearing, we say radial, I'm on this bearing to Kotoka and 60 miles out. He should be able to see because of the workings of the navigational aids. We have so many of them. One that just guides you to bring you overhead the airport. We have one that brings you from overhead the airport to touch down on the runway. We have all this infrastructure. We have air traffic control. To cut my long story short, we have an air traffic control that makes sure that aircraft are separated according to the International Civil Aviation Organization document Annex 2. So that's what the Civil Aviation are overseeing the work of the air traffic control centers in their country. They use or they make sure that the air traffic control centers are using Annex 2 the way it's supposed to be used in separating aircraft. This is also one part of air navigation service. Air traffic control are part of air navigation services. So theirs is to separate aircraft according to what is stipulated in Annex 2. And like I said, Annex 2 is just like the highway code. It's just like the highway code that you have in driving. Who has the right of way in a certain condition or in some certain condition? For example, if an aircraft are coming together and they find themselves on a collision course, how do we avoid each other? It's stipulated in Annex 2. Each aircraft will have to make turns to the right to avoid each other. Things like that, how we separated vertically, laterally, and be a small aircraft behind a big one, big behind the small. All these things is all embodied in Annex 2. And the Civil Aviation is to make sure that the Air Navigation Service Unit, that's Air Traffic Control, who is, like I said, is also part of the Air Navigation Service Unit, is separating the aircrafts according to what is stipulated in the document. So far, we've looked at the runway itself is part of the air navigation services being provided to safely navigate an aircraft from A to B. We've looked at things like the infrastructure. We have what we call the navigational aids, the one that sometimes guides you to the overhead the airport, the one that brings you from overhead the airport to the runway. We have all these navigational aids, the lights, the markings of all these that you see at the airport or at the runway and taxiway areas. And the policies that govern it are all part of air navigation services. Then we look at the air traffic control. They have a way they separate aircraft right from the time the aircraft starts its engines to the time the aircraft departs, how they even separate them in the air as they keep flying along, and how they separate them from the time they are in the air to the arrival of the next destination, and all these things. It's all part of the air navigation services. Aerophobia, waiting be your wahala. People are working day and night, and these are one of the people who do one of the sacrificial jobs in our industry, air traffic controllers. Most air traffic, especially international air traffic control centers, are manned 24 hours a day, different shifts, and just like the hospitals and things, night shift, day shift, all to make sure that aircrafts are safely navigated from one airport to the other. So we looked at air navigation services. It's in top-notch form. These are all, if I say, policies and systems to make sure that flying is safe. Fear not, aerophobia. Waiting your hala. Catch me on other videos. I've enjoyed you so far. And those of you who want detailed explanation on the air navigation services, catch me in what I call the nuggets of air transport. We are going to go into detail of air navigation services. What really goes on there, the parameters they set, the standards they set, what really goes on there. So far, aerophobia, don't be afraid. Waiting be your wahala.